The golden hues of dawn painted the Heartland Ranch in soft amber light. The crisp morning air carried the familiar scent of hay and horses, a comforting embrace that had become second nature to Amy Fleming. Standing by the paddock, she watched as the horses stirred, their breath visible in the cool morning air. It was another day, another challenge, and another opportunity to keep her mother's legacy alive. After a tumultuous year, Heartland was slowly finding its rhythm again. Lou had finally settled into her role as mayor while balancing the demands of the ranch. Georgie, back from Europe, was still finding her footing, torn between her Olympic dreams and the place that had always been her home. And Jack, the heart of Heartland, remained the unwavering force that kept them all grounded. But change was inevitable. As Amy led Spartan to the training ring, a black truck rumbled down the driveway, sending a plume of dust into the morning light. The sight of an unfamiliar vehicle immediately put her on edge. Adjusting her grip on the reins, she watched as the truck came to a halt, the driver's door creaking open. A man in his late 40s stepped out, his stance confident but not aggressive. He wore a well-worn Stetson and a weathered leather jacket, both hinting at years spent in the saddle. "Morning," he greeted, his voice rough with experience. "You must be Amy." Amy nodded, instinctively glancing at Jack, who had stepped onto the porch, his gaze assessing. "I'm Caleb Dawson," the man continued. "I heard about your work with horses, and I've got one that might need your touch." Amy relaxed slightly but remained cautious. "What kind of problem?" Caleb gestured toward the truck, where a tall, muscular stallion stood in a trailer, ears flicking nervously. "His name's Shadow. Bought him from a breeder down south. Got spirit, got potential, but he's got a temper too. Won't let anyone near him." Amy studied the horse carefully. His sleek black coat gleamed even in the dim light, but his eyes were sharp, wary, and filled with an undeniable fire. There was something about him, something familiar. Jack stepped forward, tipping his hat back. A horse like that can be dangerous in the wrong hands. Caleb met his gaze evenly. "That's why I'm here." Amy knew she couldn't turn down a challenge, especially not one that involved a horse in need. With a slow, deliberate movement, she approached the trailer, speaking in soft, soothing tones. Shadow shifted but didn't back away. It was a small victory, but it was enough. "All right," she said finally. "Let's see what we can do." The morning passed in a blur of activity. Lou was juggling calls for the town council while trying to keep Katie from sneaking off to the stables. Georgie, restless as ever, had taken Phoenix for an early ride, the wind in her hair as she pondered her next move. The ranch, as always, was a symphony of motion. By midday, Amy had Shadow in the round pen, working patiently to earn his trust. Every step forward was met with resistance, but she was no stranger to the dance of patience and persistence. She could feel his turmoil, his confusion. Somewhere in his past, something had shattered his faith in people. Amy had seen it before, and she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Caleb watched from the fence, arms crossed. "He's got fire," he commented. "That's what drew me to him, but I'm starting to think I bit off more than I can chew." Amy smiled slightly, not taking her eyes off the horse. "Every horse has a story. We just have to listen." Jack, observing from the sidelines, exchanged a glance with Caleb. "You're not from around here?" "No," Caleb admitted. "Grew up ranching down in Montana. But life has a way of pulling you in different directions." Jack's sharp eyes didn't miss the way Caleb hesitated, as if there was more to the story than he was letting on. But he let it go, for now. As evening settled over Heartland, the sky turning shades of lavender and gold, Amy leaned against the paddock fence, exhaustion tugging at her limbs. Shadow had made progress, however slight, and that was enough to keep her hopeful. Behind her, Jack approached, his footsteps quiet but familiar. "That horse is a fighter," he remarked. Amy nodded. "So am I." Jack chuckled, the deep, warm sound a reminder of everything that made Heartland feel like home. "I know." The stars began to dot the sky as Amy looked out at the rolling pastures, a sense of peace settling over her. The road ahead was uncertain, but she had faced worse before. Heartland was more than just a ranch. It was a place of second chances, for both people and horses alike, and as long as she had that, she had everything she needed. The warm morning sun stretched its golden fingers over the Heartland Ranch, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. Amy Fleming stood near the paddock, watching as the horses moved with graceful ease. There was something about mornings at Heartland that always felt like a new beginning. A fresh chance to heal, to grow, and to find purpose. Across the yard, Jack Bartlett leaned against the fence, observing his granddaughter with a quiet pride. He had seen Amy overcome countless obstacles in her life, and yet, something about this moment told him another storm was brewing. Jack wasn't one to interfere unless necessary, but his instincts told him he might need to step in sooner rather than later. Meanwhile, Lou Fleming, ever the multitasker, rushed out of the house with her phone in hand. Running a business, managing the ranch, and being a mother had always been a juggling act, but today, the weight of it all felt a little heavier. She sighed as she read an urgent email from the Hudson Town Council, another hurdle to cross. Amy's thoughts were interrupted when she noticed Logan, her protege, leading a troubled mare into the round pen. The horse, a striking chestnut named Ember, had been rescued from neglect. Her coat was dull, her movements cautious, and her eyes held a deep-rooted fear. Amy could tell right away that this would take time. "She's been refusing to let anyone near her," Logan explained, his brow furrowed with concern. "Every time we try to get close, she pulls away." Amy nodded, stepping toward the fence. "It's not just about trust. It's about patience. Let's start small." She entered the round pen slowly, her posture relaxed, her energy calm. Ember took a few hesitant steps back but didn't bolt. That was a good sign. Amy extended a hand but didn't push. Instead, she let the mare come to her in her own time. It was moments like these that reminded Amy why she did what she did, why Heartland was her calling. At the ranch house, Lou and Katie sat across from each other at the kitchen table. Katie, now a teenager, had been distant lately, and Lou was determined to get to the root of it. "You've been quiet," Lou noted, setting her coffee down. "Is something going on?" Katie hesitated, pushing her cereal around with her spoon. "It's just, I feel like I don't belong here anymore." Lou's heart clenched. "What do you mean?" "I love Heartland, but I also feel stuck. Like I'm supposed to be doing something bigger, but I don't know what." Lou reached for her daughter's hand. "I get it, Katie. I felt the same way when I was your age, but you don't have to have it all figured out right now." Katie sighed, unsure if that was the reassurance she needed. Later that afternoon, Georgie arrived back at Heartland after being away for months. She had been training intensely, pushing herself harder than ever in the world of show jumping. But stepping onto the familiar land of the ranch, she felt a wave of nostalgia wash over her. "Georgie!" Amy called, running toward her with open arms. "Hey, Ames!" Georgie grinned, hugging her cousin tightly. "It's good to be home." As Georgie walked toward the barn, she caught sight of Quinn, who had been waiting for her. Their eyes met, and in that moment, she knew. Some things never change, no matter how far she had traveled. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over Heartland, Jack sat on the porch, sipping his coffee. He watched as Amy worked with Ember, as Lou and Katie sat in the distance talking, and as Georgie reunited with Quinn. It was the calm before the storm. He could feel it in his bones. Something was coming, and when it did, the ties that bound them all together would be tested like never before. The crisp autumn air settled over Heartland as Amy stepped into the familiar rhythm of ranch life. The golden hues of the leaves painted a breathtaking backdrop against the rolling hills, but her mind was elsewhere. Her heart weighed heavy with the challenges she had faced in the past few months, yet she found solace in the steady companionship of the horses. After the unexpected revelation about her mother's old journals, Amy had spent late nights poring over them. They were more than just entries. They were glimpses into the soul of a woman who had poured her life into this land, just as Amy had. The words felt like echoes of the past, urging her forward, reminding her why she was here. Meanwhile, Lou was struggling to balance her growing responsibilities. The expansion of the Dude Ranch had turned into a more ambitious project than she had anticipated, leaving her juggling between managing the business and spending quality time with her daughters. Katie, now in her teenage years, was becoming more independent, and Lou worried that she was missing crucial moments in her daughter's life. As much as she wanted to be there for her, the weight of expectations often kept her away. Tim, never one to back down from a challenge, had taken a keen interest in Amy's project with the Mustangs. Despite his rough exterior, he had a soft spot for the wild horses, and his bond with them only grew stronger. His presence on the ranch was more permanent now, and while his unpredictable ways often led to tension, deep down, Amy appreciated his unwavering support. Across the ranch, Jack was dealing with his own battles. The years were catching up to him, but he refused to slow down. Lisa had urged him to take a step back, to allow himself the grace of enjoying the life he had built. But Jack was stubborn. The ranch was his heart, his legacy, and stepping away wasn't an option. As the days passed, Amy found herself drawn more and more into the mystery surrounding her mother's journals. There were entries about a horse named Whisper, a mare that had seemingly vanished from Heartland's history. Intrigued, she began piecing together the fragments, determined to uncover the truth. With Georgie away at training, Amy missed her keen eye and fierce determination, but she knew she had to do this on her own. One afternoon, as she and Lindy walked through the stable, the little girl pointed toward a forgotten corner where old tack and equipment were stored. "Mama, look!" she exclaimed, her tiny fingers brushing against a dusty old saddle. Amy's breath hitched as she recognized the engraving. Marion Fleming. Her mother's name. Heart-pounding, she carefully lifted the saddle, revealing a faded, yellowed envelope tucked underneath. Hands trembling, she opened it, revealing a letter addressed to Jack. The ink was slightly smudged, but the words were still legible. "Dad, if you're reading this, it means I never had the chance to tell you in person. Whisper was never meant to leave Heartland. She belonged here. But circumstances forced me to make a choice, one that I've regretted every day since. If Amy ever finds this, tell her to follow her heart. She will know what to do." Tears welled in Amy's eyes as she absorbed the words, a secret her mother had carried, one that had remained hidden for years. She knew she had to find Whisper, wherever the mare had gone, whatever had happened. It was a part of her mother's story, and now it had become a part of hers. As she folded the letter carefully, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but then again, nothing at Heartland ever was. And that was exactly what made it worth it. The crisp morning air carried the scent of damp earth and fresh hay, as the Heartland ranch stirred to life. Amy stood by the paddock, watching Spartan graze peacefully. The peaceful moment was short-lived, as she heard a truck pull into the driveway. Jack stepped out onto the porch, his eyes narrowing as he recognized the vehicle. "Looks like Clint's here," he muttered. Amy turned just in time to see Clint Riley, the social worker, step out of his truck, his expression unreadable. A teenage boy trailed behind him, his hood pulled low over his face. Amy felt a pang of familiarity, another troubled soul seeking refuge at Heartland. "This is Josh," Clint introduced. "He's been bouncing from one foster home to another. He needs some stability." Jack exchanged a glance with Lisa, who had come to stand beside him. Lou, who had just walked up, sighed and folded her arms. "Are you sure Heartland is the right place for him?" Lou asked skeptically. Clint nodded. "He's got a history with horses. Maybe being here will help." Amy took a step forward. "Well then, let's give it a shot." Josh barely looked up as he followed Amy to the barn. He seemed uninterested in the surroundings, his hands jammed into his hoodie pockets. Amy didn't push. She knew from experience that trust had to be earned. Meanwhile, Tim was dealing with his own set of problems. The rodeo school was struggling financially, and his students were growing restless. He had tried securing sponsorships, but the local businesses weren't biting. He needed a big win to keep the school afloat. "Maybe we need a showcase," Caleb suggested as he helped saddle a horse. "Something to draw attention to what we're doing here." Tim ran a hand through his hair. "And who's gonna pay for it? We can't afford the setup." Caleb grinned. "That's where connections come in. What if we reach out to old rodeo buddies? See if they'd be willing to sponsor." Tim mulled it over. He hated asking for favors, but Caleb had a point. They needed a win, and fast. Back at Heartland, Amy watched as Josh hesitantly approached one of the horses. He reached out a tentative hand, brushing his fingers along its muzzle. A flicker of something, maybe curiosity, crossed his face. "You like horses?" Amy asked gently. Josh shrugged. Used to. Before. Amy didn't push, but she saw the way he lingered. There was something there. Something waiting to be unlocked. As the days passed, Josh slowly opened up. He was quiet, but he listened. He watched Amy work with the horses, his expression unreadable. One afternoon, as Amy was training a particularly stubborn horse, Josh spoke up. "You're too soft with him." Amy turned, surprised. "Oh?" Josh nodded. "He's testing you. He thinks he's in charge." Amy studied the horse, then nodded slowly. "You might be right." She adjusted her stance, applying firmer cues. The horse hesitated, then responded. Amy turned back to Josh, impressed. "You've got a good eye." Josh shrugged but didn't deny it. It was a start. As the rodeo showcase approached, Tim worked tirelessly to pull it all together. He managed to call in a few favors, and soon enough, they had enough sponsorship to make it happen. The turnout was better than expected, with people coming from all over to watch. Tim felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the break they needed. At Heartland, Amy found Josh in the barn late one evening, brushing down one of the horses. He looked up, a rare softness in his expression. "Maybe this place isn't so bad," he admitted. Amy smiled. "You're always welcome here." For the first time, Josh smiled back. It was small, but it was real. Heartland had worked its magic once again. The crisp morning air carried the scent of freshly cut hay as the sun stretched over the rolling Alberta hills. The Heartland Ranch, nestled between the golden fields and towering evergreens, stood as a testament to resilience, love, and unwavering commitment. Amy Fleming leaned against the fence, watching Spartan graze peacefully. It was a rare, quiet moment, amid the whirlwind of emotions and challenges that had shaped the past few months. The weight of her responsibilities pressed against her shoulders, but she had never been one to back down. Ever since the fire at the old barn, the Heartland family had been working tirelessly to rebuild. Jack Bartlett, ever the stoic patriarch, had taken it upon himself to oversee every detail of the reconstruction, but as the days passed, his health had begun to show signs of strain. Amy noticed the slight limp in his step, the weariness in his eyes. "Grandpa, you need to take it easy," she said one morning as he inspected the new wooden beams. Jack gave a gruff chuckle. "I've been building barns longer than you've been alive, Amy. I'm not about to stop now." Yet, deep down she knew he was pushing himself too hard. Lou had voiced her concerns too, but Jack was as stubborn as they came. Meanwhile, Lou herself was struggling to balance her mayoral duties with her responsibilities at the ranch. Between town meetings, budget discussions, and a new proposal to modernize the local infrastructure, she barely had time to breathe. But Lou was never one to shy away from a challenge. "If I can handle running a dude ranch in a town, I can handle anything," she told Peter during one of their rare quiet dinners. But even Peter could see the exhaustion in her eyes. Tim Fleming had spent years trying to mend the bridges he had once burned. Now, as he watched his daughters navigate their own struggles, he couldn't help but reflect on his own choices. With Jessica by his side, he found solace in knowing he wasn't facing the future alone. One afternoon, as he worked with a troubled Mustang, he found himself thinking about his relationship with his daughters. Amy and Lou had grown into strong, independent women, but he still wished he had been there more when they were younger. Jessica, sensing his mood, placed a gentle hand on his arm. "You can't change the past, Tim, but you can be here now." Her words resonated deeply. He had spent so long dwelling on regrets that he had forgotten to appreciate the present. As Amy continued working with troubled horses, she found herself drawn to a new project, a horse named Phoenix, who had been abandoned and left to fend for himself. The bond between them grew quickly, but as she trained him, she began to question her own future. Did she want to stay at Heartland forever? Or was there something more waiting for her beyond the ranch? Her conversations with Ty's spirit in her quiet moments only deepened her inner conflict. She felt his presence in the rustling of the leaves, in the way Spartan nuzzled her after a long day. "What would you do, Ty?" she whispered one evening, looking up at the stars. Though there was no answer, she felt a warmth in her heart, a silent encouragement to follow her own path. As Heartland's reconstruction neared completion, the entire town came together for a celebration. Old friends, new neighbors, and family members gathered to mark a new beginning. The sounds of laughter and music filled the air as the new barn stood tall against the evening sky. Jack, for all his stubbornness, allowed himself a moment of pride. "Heartland has always been more than just a ranch," he said as he raised a toast. "It's a family, and family always finds a way." As Amy looked around at the people she loved, she realized that no matter where her journey took her, Heartland would always be her home. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the land, and for the first time in a long while, peace settled over Heartland. The cool morning breeze carried the scent of fresh hay across Heartland, the first signs of spring painting the ranch in soft hues of green. Life had a way of moving forward, even after hardships, and today was no different. Amy stood by the paddock, watching Spartan graze peacefully, the years reflected in the gray along his muzzle. Yet his spirit remained unbroken, much like the people who called Heartland home. Lou had been up since dawn, her mind racing with 100 thoughts. The expansion of the Dude Ranch was finally taking shape, but with it came the weight of responsibility. She had always been a perfectionist, but this project felt different, more personal. With Rick's help, she had arranged a grand opening event, hoping to attract both tourists and locals alike. Georgie had promised to make it back from Florida in time for the event, and Lou counted the days, eager to see her daughter again. Katie, on the other hand, was growing more independent by the day, throwing herself into training with Phoenix. She had inherited her mother's fierce determination, and Lou couldn't help but feel a mixture of pride and nostalgia. Meanwhile, Amy found herself at a crossroads. The horse therapy program had taken off in ways she never imagined, drawing interest from clients as far as Montana. But with growth came tough decisions. Did she want to expand, hire more trainers and turn it into a full-scale operation? Or did she want to keep it intimate, ensuring every horse and rider received her full attention? Jack had given her his usual wise advice, reminding her that Heartland wasn't just a business. It was a way of life. He urged her to follow her heart, to listen to the land, and to trust that the right path would reveal itself in time. Just as Amy was lost in thought, a familiar voice called out her name. She turned to see Ty's mother, Lily, standing at the gate. It had been years since she'd visited, and Amy's heart clenched with a mixture of emotions. Lily had always meant well, but her struggles had kept her distant. The end, or a new beginning,